Hey, Barbell Logic listeners. What you're about to hear is one of a few episodes I recorded with my original co-host, Scott Hambrick. His life and lifting have changed a lot since you last heard him on the podcast. And in these episodes, we discussed what's changed and just catch up. And we also talk about lifting. Now, an important reminder that these podcasts are for entertainment purposes only. Scott's opinions are not necessarily the opinions of Barbell Logic or myself, but it makes for some pretty damn entertaining conversations. So Scott and I touch on cultural and political stuff that we don't normally touch on in the podcast. So if you don't want to hear that stuff, it's totally fine. We'll return to our normal podcast for barbell enthusiasts and coaches in just a couple weeks. If you've missed Scott on the podcast, I'm happy to bring this to you. I'm really proud of the podcast we recorded together, and I'm excited to have him back on the podcast for a few episodes. You can always listen to some of the older podcasts with Scott that are out in individual episodes or re-released in the series. If you want to just hear Scott, you can check out one of his podcasts, the Online Great Books podcast, the Music and Ideas podcast, and his new one, the Growing Resilience podcast, links for which you can find in the show notes. I hope you all enjoy the shows. You're listening to Barbell Logic,
the podcast where we talk about what it means to experience strength
and how you can use simple, hard, and effective strategies in training and nutrition to improve your life.
It starts with meeting you where you are right now and finding lasting solutions.
Welcome to the show. So how much is even being out here somewhat of, certainly you can't be completely isolated from things like inflation. I mean, there are some things you can do because you're eating your own calories at some point, but it takes a lot of gas to run equipment terrible out here. It takes you still got to go buy equipment to, the stuff we were talking about, the lumber, obviously the cost of lumber to build a house. One of the reasons you didn't start your house last year is the lumber was so ridiculous. You had to wait a year. So you lived in a barn. Now the lumber's come down 50%, but how does what's going on in the world kind of change the way you live your everyday life out here, kind of plan stuff? And then, I don't know, do you have some sort of advice for the listeners who aren't doing this, who are still going to the day job?
No, keep going.
Commuting.
We're full. Keep going. Eat at Chipotle, sit in the cubicle. Don't do this. We don't want you. No, everything's changed so much. We talked about, I don't know, I think it was in May, we talked about, hey, let's record some shows, and then I started thinking about it. And I'm like, I don't even know how to do this show anymore because the world was entirely different when we did that last episode. Yeah. It really was. Like, who's the audience? What are they interested in? What's important to people now? Like, the whole world's completely changed. Things changed a lot after September 11th. We talk about that.
Sure.
After 2020, it changed way more.
Way more. For sure.
It's worse than, I don't know, I wasn't there during Pearl Harbor. Probably worse than that.
Sure.
So, I don't know. When I was a kid, I lived with mom and dad, of course, like everybody does, about 22 miles that way. And it was more rural than this is. And we were living in town, and we bought that house intending to stay there. Like, it was handicap accessible, all that stuff I said earlier. We intended to stay there, and we told our neighbors, well, we're moving, and they're like, where are you moving? We told them what we're doing. They're like, well, that's what you've always wanted to do. That's not what I wanted to do. Well, maybe it is, but I was too stupid to know it. I don't know. I never fit when I was there, and I never did fit, and they knew it, and they said that when they told me, oh, that's what you've always wanted to do. I did right after Charity and I got married. I wrote a big long essay about wanting to do something like this, and I found it, and it's on my blog. I think I put it on there. But I've always wanted to do something like this. But the world has changed so much, and we did do this. And when I go back to town, like, I fit in less and less. It's crazier every time I go in. The decay is profound. Right. Like, if you don't go to your major urban center, wherever that is, for 8 weeks, and then you go back, the amount that the roads have degraded is right.
Yeah, I want to make sure people understand. You're not, and I mean, I'm sure you have opinions on this too. You're not even literally talking about moral decay. You're literally talking about physical decay.
Right. Broken curbstones, potholes.
I told you back in November, how much has the world changed between just last November and now? I went to Portland in November. I hadn't been to Portland in 2 years, right? So, and it's Portland, right? But, dude, it was unbelievable.
Oh, this is a third world country, guys.
Was really not bad 2.5 years ago. in November, I bet I saw 500 tents between the airport and my hotel in the Uber. I couldn't believe, and I'm not talking about like John, just the major overpasses and exchanges. I'm talking everywhere.
Right.
I go down in Springfield. We live our very insulated life, as I would be the first to admit. We live in our nice house on the southwest side of town, and we've got our land down in.
You are privileged.
We are. Listen, I am privileged. Now, listen, I wasn't born that way. Like, I mean, God, I'm sure. Yes, I had a great family. God, listen, I had parents that loved me, but I was raised. I know
you should suffer.
Well, I shouldn't suffer, but. We live way down on the south side of town in a nice little neighborhood, and we were insulated. And then we travel to our cabin down in the rural land that's 40 miles south of us. We don't ever get up into town anymore. We're right on the edge of town. And anything we need to eat, we don't eat at restaurants very much anymore. And if we do, we've got 3 restaurants that we eat at that are all within a mile of the house, right? So I went to downtown Springfield the other day. So Chestnut Expressway is the main road that runs east and west, right through downtown. We're all like, where the courthouse is and the police station, all that kind of stuff. Dude, it looked like San Francisco tent city. There were 50 tents.
It's crazy.
On the lawns, like in front of the courthouses, right next to Central High School, where all the kids are going to school with just, with homeless people and drugs. I mean, so when you talk about the decay, again, I'm sure we could go off on another tangent and talk about more like literal physical decay. Like the world is breaking down. It's bizarre.
Yeah, this is a third world country. Texas was under, boil warnings for their water supply, like in the last few weeks, you know, brownouts for electricity.
Yep.
The roads are absolutely terrible.
Right.
We could talk about moral decay. Charity and I went into town. This isn't too crazy. We went into town the other day, down on Brookside to this Mexican restaurant. I think me and you've been there. Down on Brookside, which is kind of one of the trendy places in Tulsa. We sit down, and I look around, and there are a lot of young people there. Young people, maybe 34 to 20 to 34 years old. The kind of after work Friday happy hour crowd. It was like 6 o'clock, 5:50 p.m.
Right,
and just enormous, obese, just monstrous people, like not person shaped.
Right.
But hair,
Jabba the Hutt
crazy hair.
Yeah.
I know this sounds like old man stuff to people, but listen, in the 80s, it wasn't like this.
Right.
Like crazy hair, the piercings, the lurid tattoos.
Right.
And no one dating. Like nobody's like, hey, when
everybody's
you get off,
single, and everybody's on their phone.
Everybody's single. Like 3 women and a gay dude in a booth, 3 women and a gay dude in a booth, 4 women in scrubs over here. Like there were almost no men. Almost no men.
Right.
And it was just really odd because even 10 years ago, like you get off work and you're to call your girlfriend, you're like, hey, when you get off Friday, let's meet at the whatever, and we'll eat a burrito, and then we'll go across the street and to the
whether
place
it's
where the
romantic
live
or not,
music is.
just guys and girls hanging out.
No,
doesn't
not anymore.
happen.
Forget it. And these people are so big, like being coaches. I mean, people are going to say I'm fat shaming. You're stupid. Like being coaches, like I know, like the metabolic disorder and all of the problems attendant with that. Like those people don't have normal drives.
They're not healthy.
They don't have normal drives.
It's not even about being fat.
They don't have normal drives to like reproduce, to take on tasks and complete them, to drive their life forward. Like these people they're dying.
Yeah, right.
You know, if you see a 28-year-old person with valgus knee who weighs 325, that person's not going to live to be 70 years old unless something really drastic happens to him. They're going to end up with knee replacements, they're going to end up with hip replacements, they're going to have degenerative disease in their spine, metabolic disorder, that's going to turn into diabetes, Yahtzee, polycystic ovary, blah, 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 right? And it was like, I'm not talking about like a few people, 80%.
Right. Yep. I know. Well, and you talk about, I know that the vast majority of people aren't going to do the type of thing that you're doing or live the life that you're living.
I think they're being poisoned. I think the food is killing them. Like the quality of the food and what's in the food is killing them.
And the entire culture and all. But dude, the problem is that not only are they not able to come out and be completely self-sufficient here, they're not able to be 5% self-sufficient, right? And so their whole life is just hand to mouth, paycheck to paycheck, work in the cubicle job, and then go do the thing that, to go to the sushi restaurant to take the pictures of the thing to post on your Instagram. That's the whole life.
Right.
And it's pretty sad. It's certainly we've experienced some of that too. And it's easy to fall into that. But you got to wake up from it at some point. We were at a restaurant the last 2 nights ago. We went on a date. There's a cute little place down in Ozark, Missouri. They built right on the Finley River. They've taken an old Ozark mill that was from 1834, and they've turned it into it's a restaurant upstairs. It's a nice speakeasy restaurant downstairs. We just went to the restaurant upstairs. This is kind of casual, but good food. And they don't take reservations upstairs. And so we dropped Kinsley off at church, and Rachel and I went down there just a few miles down the road, and went and ate, no reservations. And so they didn't even ask. They sat us in the bar. There's some tables in the bar section, and it's like it's pretty well-to-do place, and there was a guy in there that was dressed like he had just gotten off work. He was in a suit, looked nice. The loudest, filthiest language I've ever heard in my life from this guy. Like, I almost got up. I was like, I mean, if my kids had been sitting there, I'd been like, what are you doing? And I'm sitting at a table. I didn't ask to sit in the bar. I'm sitting at a table with my wife on a date, trying to eat, some vegetables on a vegetable board. And this guy, I mean, dude, I can't even use the letters to say the words that I was just like, where did we get here where someone could literally shout? That's what it is. It's just the degradation of all of this, of all of society, of the physical, the infrastructure, the culture, the moral, like all this stuff. And it's not, I want to be clear, it's not, I'm not trying to be, Bertha better than you. I have had lots of my own issues and tried to work through those over the years, and I'm far from it. But I think it's the complete disdain for that decline. It's like, it's the apathy. Like, nobody actually cares.
Well, they might not. I don't know. They might not. Often they're just not even aware. They don't even know they ought to.
Ignorant. Right.
But let me try to be compassionate, Matt Reynolds. Let me try. Since 2020, everything is so stressful. I think everybody's just redlined. They're just doing all they can do.
Right.
And if I throw the fence post driver on my foot and it hurts and my stress level goes up, I'm going to drop an F-bomb. Well, that guy with his stupid job and the HR lady riding him like a rented mule, and his old lady, and their no-sex marriage, and his weird kid.
Yep.
He's constantly got the fence post driver on his foot.
Yep.
And
that's a good point.
I mean, they can't, everybody's redlined, you know?
Sure.
And it's terrible. Like, can you imagine the cortisol, like, in the town near you?
Oh.
Like, the stress hormone, it's just killing people.
Right.
And you said something about self-reliance earlier. Like, they're not even 5%.
Right.
Dude, I don't know that it's even possible to be more than, let's put a number on it, 25%.
Sure.
Like, my canning jars come from wherever the hell it is. You know, I called the guy from 100 miles north of here to buy the organic fertilizer. He burned diesel fuel. Like, everything's so interconnected that it's really difficult.
And I think you'll get out here. You're 100% right. There's, like, you still have to buy the stuff. You still have to buy the lumber and build the thing. But once the thing is built, and if you can bunker enough stuff, you can certainly set up yourself up to be like, I can be mostly self-reliant for the next several decades. I think that's the point. It's that most people, as they've talked, have 48 hours worth of food in their house. That's a problem.
Yeah,
right?
A prepper is just somebody that has a bigger pantry than you.
Well, right, and actually stocks it.
Yeah.
Right, because the reality is that people all over the United States live in McMansions with massive pantries and no food.
Yeah.
Certainly not any food they can live off of, right? It's nothing but chips and cereal.
Yeah, it's difficult to do that. We just bought a beef steer from one of my buddies and went and picked it up at the butcher, and put him in the freezer. And well, that's our beef.
Yeah.
That's our beef. That's what we're going to have for the year. So you don't say, I'd like to have T-bones Friday night. And then you go to the store and you buy 4 tenderloins.
You go to the freezer.
You're like, what do we have left?
That's right.
Oh, okay, we have 8 pounds of liver. We have the tongue and 1 rump roast. Like, it's the end of the year. The new cow hasn't come in. Like, you got to cook what you've got.
Sure.
And it takes a different skill set and a different mindset.
Sure.
And we struggle with it. We're raising these broiler chickens. So, okay, well, let's have chicken tonight. Well, you're not going to have tenders. You're not going to do hot wings. You're not going to do a nice breast. Like,
just a chicken breast.
We've
got
whole
chicken.
60 whole chickens in the freezer.
Right. We got 2 breasts, 2 thighs, 2 legs, 2 wings in a chicken. Plus, if you actually put it in there, livers and hearts, which I got 1. You left my livers and heart and kidneys in. I want them all next time.
I'll make it
I want all that.
Man.
Awful. Good stuff.
Yeah. So and if you wanted to, you could.
Don't throw it on me.
If you wanted to, you could, when you butcher the chickens, you could quarter them and you could put,
Sure.
sack of drumsticks.
Sure.
It's
a pain in the ass.
And nobody got time for this.
No. Well, it's frozen, so you have to.
Well, you do it when we process them.
Yeah, when you do it. Yeah, makes sense.
See, if I was, American modern management theory, like you, I'd say, well, that would be a value add.
No, that's not like me. I like cooking your whole chickens. I'm the number one purchaser of Hamburg chickens, I believe.
That is not true.
Oh, okay.
My buddy DePaul is.
How many more has he bought than me?
Gosh,
What's he buying?
He eats 2 a week. Like
okay.
He's a sack fox Indian, and like if he eats unprocessed carbohydrates, like his blood sugar goes way up. Like
You mean processed carbohydrates?
I mean processed carbohydrates. I mean he gets sick.
Yeah, interesting.
And he eats like
he and his whole family for generations have never eaten processed carbohydrates. Really? So if they do, there's been no adaptation whatsoever.
So he's like pre-diabetic. He's going to the doctor. He's 40. The doctors can't figure out what to do. And then finally he's like, I've tried everything. I'm just going to go
eat fresh chickens,
carnivore keto.
Stuff, yeah.
And he's great. He's lost a bunch of weight. His blood sugar's fine. The doctor's like, what are you doing? You tell him. Of course, they don't believe it.
Right. They're like, no, you can't do that.
Like he's the one that took all my feet. Like he's like, I want all the chicken feet.
I don't want the feet.
And he makes bone broth out of them.
Oh, yeah. Listen, the bone broth, bro. That's the best bone broth I've ever had in my life. Every time we make a chicken, we make the bone broth. I put it in a quart mason jar, and I'll drink it. I'll heat it up and drink it. I'll put it in rice.
That's what he does for breakfast. Bone broth.
So good, so good.
Yeah, so he's my biggest buyer right now.
Okay, all right. Well, I better step it up.
That's true.
Well, I lost a deep freeze. I was telling you, Rachel, I went out to the land a couple weeks ago, and we had a mouse problem for a few weeks before, and so. The problem is, it's like being here. The only store within 25 miles is a Dollar General.
Right.
So you're like, okay. By the way, don't get me started on a terrible company. Dollar General, terrible company. Plays on the lower class. Terrible. They're awful. They're awful. But anyway,
Doritos,
no fresh food, no fresh
Mountain
meat,
Dew.
no fresh vegetables, no screw you, Dollar General. But I need it in the town that I'm in. So I go down, I look for mouse traps. Of course, they've got one package of 2 glue traps, no real mouse traps, and then a whole bunch of mouse poison. And I'm like, that's all I got. Well, the problem with mouse poison is...
And he dies in your wall.
That's right. They die underneath the cabinets and stuff. And they're not going to die in my walls because I've got the spray foam insulation, thank God. But anywhere else, they can still die. So at least I'm not going to lose them in the wall. So we put all that out. I go back a week later, and I've got 3 or 4 mice that are dead and I've caught. And we go back 2 weeks later. This is 2 weeks ago. And as I'm approaching the cabin, it reeks like dead animal. And I'm like, oh, God, we've got to, maybe we might have dead rats.
3 dead rats.
Yeah, coons have gotten in here or something. So I go in there and we're looking and I'm like, oh no. And I look at the bottom of my brand new upright deep freezer and it is dripping Hamburg chicken meat juice and brisket juice. And there are 10,000 maggots on my floor.
Awesome.
And I don't know, flipped a breaker or something. My air conditioner was off. It was 97 degrees inside my cabin. The freezer went off. Thank God the fridge stayed. And we cleaned out rotten flesh for 7 hours out of my cabin. It's still kind of, I don't know if I'm ever going to get it out of there. I might have to burn the place down. I don't know. The freezer's not in. The freezer's out back. I plugged it back in on the porch and the freezer worked fine. Rachel's like, that's never going back in the house again. I think I'm just going to have to buy a new deep freeze.
I'll leave it on the porch. That's what your neighbors
I know. So that's it's going to have to work awful hard on that porch. Right now it's 100 degrees.
You can get, you can get some of that crime scene level stuff, and you can get it figured out.
Every time I watch a murder show now, and they walk into the building and they smell the dead bodies and they start retching, I'm like, I know what that smells like. So it's pretty bad. All right. Anything else about the?
I don't know. Do you want to look at any of these questions?
If they're I got programming questions. I think we hit most of the lifestyle. See if there's any other lifestyle stuff on there. Okay, let me look. So I'm recording on my phone.
We're doing another batch in mid-October.
Another batch of chickens?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Got all my butcher dates for next year figured out too. Look at him read. I'm
scared. I have so many questions.
He's moving his lips when he reads. I love it.
Oh, am I? Do you know that listen, did I ever tell you this? I do this?
I don't know.
My mom told me when I was a kid. So I always thought I was an excellent reader. As someone like yourself who runs online great books, and when I say I was an excellent reader, what I mean is I was frequently called on in kindergarten to read in front of the class, And I found out that I'm actually just an excellent oral reader out loud. And I read silently at the exact same speed that I read out. I don't really read faster. I mouth the words.
That's fine.
And my mom caught me doing that when I was 6 or 7 years old. And she's like, she noticed that I think I'm such a verbal processor. I have to speak the words as I read them but I do comprehend everything I read, but I'm pretty slow. And the reason I figured out, I remember when I found out I was slow is when I was taking the ACT, I was like, I only read one story. I nailed the first 10 questions, but the next 30, it was a struggle. So, you still playing guitar any?
Some.
Yeah.
Some need to do it more.
It seems like a good kind of fall campfire activity out here when there's people hanging out.
We have plans to do more. While you're looking, I started another podcast that's more about this stuff. It's called Growing Resilience. So if anybody
wants to know that.
Yeah, hell yeah. So if anybody wants to hear us talk about what we're doing with my partner Todd Dwyer, and I do that show. It comes out mostly on Tuesdays. Huh. He's hardcore.
Are you still recording the Music and Ideas podcast?
Yes. Yep. It's infrequent. It's not regular.
I don't think I've seen one lately.
Todd lived in a teepee for like 7 years.
Yeah.
I don't mean like a yurt. I mean like
an actual teepee.
Right. Like he would cook dinner and it would be frozen before he could get done.
Yeah.
He in the Pacific Northwest. He's hardcore and he's the subject matter expert and I'm learning. But we do that show, Growing Resilience.
Do you know Gary Collins and The Simple Life? You listen to his podcast? Well, he's been on Brett's podcast. He's got kind of a prepper Simple Life podcast. Imagine. Right. So he talked about same thing, self-sustainability. So I'm going to be on his podcast here in a couple of weeks to talk I think about the voluntary hardship and strength.
About your freezer.
So my freezer, how should I have cleaned out the dead meat? A lot of people ask us about bourbon. It's kind of funny. I have backed way off my alcohol consumption. And it was really for health reasons for me. What are you laughing at? I always want to qualify. I didn't beat my kids. I didn't.
Your face is less red.
Well, it's awfully hot. If that's the case, as warm as it is out here, that's probably good. No, man, I've just been lifting a lot and walking with my wife. Well, when I say lifting a lot, not
frequently.
Not frequently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, trying to do something every day. And that might be, just some accessory work if I'm beat up, or I walk with my wife every day, working around the land as much as I can, going to the pool even, which I realize isn't really, but like just getting out and getting some sun makes me feel better. And so for me, the alcohol stuff was becoming more of a net negative. It wasn't about getting hammered. It was more of it's the calories and just the load. And, I'm tracking again on MyFitnessPal and stuff. It really shows what a heavy caloric load that goes to nothing. And I'm like, God, I would have rather had some protein and carbs for this. And so, and then also, I think this time of year, it's 100 degrees outside.
Dude, I can't drink anything.
It's awful.
I'm drinking about 2.5 gallons of water a day and peeing once a day.
Yeah, right.
I can't. I'll drink tomato beer.
Yep.
If you're in our Telegram channel, my recipe's there.
Is it actually you're making like a clamato, or you're making, or not clamato? What do we call it?
A michelada.
Yeah,
pretty
michelada.
much.
It's similar to a michelada, but it's mostly just tomato juice and beer
with Busch Light, just like cheapest beer I can get.
Do a little Worcestershire in there or anything, or
and that Maggi sauce.
Yeah, Maggi sauce. That's which is basically like
so
Mexican
it's
Worcestershire.
Super salty.
Yeah,
it's got acid in it.
Yeah,
it's actually. It's probably akin to Gatorade.
Better than Gatorade. Well, and that's what you and I drank when we went to Mexico.
Yeah.
You sweat all day, and you're like, I just want this because it's...
But whiskey or something like that.
I know.
Right now, I'd have kidney failure.
Right.
And people still ask me questions about it, and I bought all of the whiskey and tobacco that I would need or my family would ever need for 1,000 years. Before 2019.
Right.
I haven't bought a bottle of anything in forever.
It comes back to the self-reliance sort of thing. So do you have a still and distill your own? No. So you had to buy the whiskey, so you weren't really self-reliant on whiskey.
Going up. We were talking about at the time.
But you have so much of it. Now you really are self-reliant when it comes to whiskey, right? So it's kind of that you've crossed it. We had a question
fortunate
about
enough to have the income to like if I see
Weller
37 bottles of Atlantic 107, yes please.
Right. I by the way, I found some Weller yesterday at the liquor store here, and they limit one. That
Atlantic 107?
Case, no, they just had the green, but that's still which, I'll still buy it if they've got it. And they had handles of it. But so I walked up with 4 handles and they're like, just one. No, dang it. So they had cases of it.
No, it's a third world country, dude. Like so much stuff is rationed.
Yeah, I know. It's World War II.
It's awesome.
My whiskey, but same thing. So don't need it that much. I get the question about, does the Hambrick bourbon rule still apply? Remember your bourbon rule about? I think you said $10 if it's a 60%, right? If it's 60% alcohol by volume, $10 per year of age is an incredible deal. That's too cheap now, right?
I have literally not bought any in 3 years. I have no idea. I'm sure it's not cheap enough. It probably needs to be $18 or $20.
That's why I said $15 to $18 is probably where it's at now. But that's the other thing. I've kind of gotten into I have my well priced, the good. Again, it's Weller if you can find it. It's Maker's Mark 46 for me. I like. A lot of people don't like that. It doesn't matter. Whatever that is. Like it could be. Evan Williams Bottle and Bond is
the Evan Williams Bottle and Bond is.
So good for the price.
Cheap. Yep.
The Heaven Hill Bottle and Bond, which is basically the same thing. That you just can't hardly beat. The Old Bardstown Bottle and Bond, all that kind of stuff. Old Granddad 114.
I have heard that you can't find it. And
I got it yesterday.
Yeah.
They had it at the same place.
And what's the little squatty bottle we used? That's the Old Granddad, and then we would buy Heaven Hill.
Yep. I tell you what I used to find all the time down there at Park Hill was I bought Stag Junior all day down there. I haven't seen that on a shelf in 3 years.
No, they're exporting. It's free trade. It's great. So the stuff that's regional and part of your heritage, they ship it so Japanese and Chinese business people can buy it. So you can just right off and drink Natural Light. It's
That's
awesome.
right. I've never had a Natural Light. You've ever had a Natural Light?
Oh yeah, that's
there are 2 white trash beers. There are 2 white trash beers I've never had. I've never had Keystone. I've never had Natty Light. We did do a blind taste test not that long ago on all of the white trash beers, and it was heavily Missouri favored with Busch Light and Bud Light and all that stuff. But the High Life won. The Champagne de Beers was a blind taste test winner.
Yeah,
pretty good.
People deuce on that, but they're missing the point. It's not about flavor. You can't. You don't want like a taste explosion after you drop the post driver in your foot.
Right. I mean, you're working out on a lawn mowing beer. You're working in the yard. That's what you just want, a PBR or a High Life or a Busch Light. Nothing wrong with that at all. It's good. Shower beer, that kind of stuff. I don't need a hazy IPA for which can drink it hazy. Gross. Imagine how gross that'd be at 100 degrees out here.
Stupid.
It's disgusting.
Yeah, but you need that little bit of alcohol in there because there are alcohol soluble aromatics in your Clamato and in your Worcestershire sauce that it's not the same. Like I've made it with. I'm like, I'll make it with club soda.
Right. No.
It's not the same.
No, it can't be.
Have to have a little bit of alcohol in there to get it.
But you're right. It's not very much. As you're taking a 4.5% beer and you're cutting it in half, so it's a 2.5% alcohol drink. But, all right. Anything else?
No. If anybody wants to hear about that stuff, you can listen to that Growing Resilience podcast.
I'll listen to it for sure.
My partner Todd. It's the same format of every show I ever do. I got the careerist, subject matter expert guy, and then
you're the color man.
I'm the color man. I make jokes and.
Perfect.
All that. Yeah.
Feels a good role there.
It's good. It's that one's growing quite a bit. I think that the podcast market is so crowded.
It is, but still quality rises to the top.
Yeah, and people are really interested in that particular thing. That segment is growing faster than everything
like your
else.
Music and Ideas podcast. You've got a few of those that are the bluegrass one, the High Mountain Sound episode, the Outlaw Country. I mean, dude, some of those are so good. And again, like your ability to store, you just got like a file cabinet up there between your ears, and it's like you just pull that file out, and and then you just start talking. And I'm like, how does this guy remember all this stuff? It's incredible. And I think the thing that makes you such a good storyteller with those things is the ribbon that binds the whole thing together. And I don't know if you've ever thought about it that way, but you're like, well, and then this guy played he was a bass player in this guy's band, and he went on to do this, and then, and that was this guy's uncle, and you're like, oh, holy shit, it's all like connected, and somehow you've picked up on that whole ribbon.
That's how you remember it.
That's how you remember it.
Well, if you don't know that, you can't remember it. There's just random trivial pursuit.
I think that's why people learn so much from you, is that when you teach them that stuff, then you're handing us the ribbon. You had to figure all that out. At some point, I don't know what you do to do the research to find that all out, and the ribbon that binds it all together, but it's pretty nice.
I don't know either.
You're able to wire it together. So
that show's not doing worth a darn. It's me and old producer Trent from this show, and Carl Shute, Music and Ideas podcast, but we're doing like fair use commentary on copyrighted stuff.
Right.
So nobody will promote it. Spotify won't promote it.
Right.
Amazon won't. Nobody will. So it's just not. It was a stupid idea.
Well,
we like doing it. But
and some of it is, we started this podcast without any delusions of grandeur of it ever having anybody listen to it. It was just to get a bunch of our ideas out so I didn't have to hold it up here in my head and hold in the bandwidth and then people listen to it. So I think there's still value in that and some virtue in that to be able, like those stories are great stories to pass down to your grandkids at some point, whether anybody listens to those podcasts, whether it's accepted by the masses or not, I don't think matters in the grand scheme of things. So anyway, so that's another Barbell Logic podcast. We're going to record a couple more. We're going to talk about some MED programming, some of it, ideas that maybe have changed, or even more, maybe some demographics that we haven't applied it to in the past. I think we're going to have good conversations there. I'm sure we'll still go down the rabbit trail a few times on those other shows and talk a little bit more about life. I'm sure it'll creep in a little bit. But thanks for letting me come out here and do the show on your farm. Yeah,
well, you're welcome. I hope everybody is enjoying the backup klaxon there. It's awesome.
I'd love to do that. We'd love to do this. A couple times a year, come out and come and visit, pick up chickens and do some podcasts.
Yeah, we'll do the conspiracy theory show next.
That could be fun. So if you've received value from this, definitely give it a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcasts. That always helps us. It helps us with the algorithm tremendously. We've been suggested a lot lately by Apple Podcasts, and it makes a massive difference. Like an extra 75 to 85,000 downloads per month additional of what we were getting if Apple starts to...
They will never recommend this show.
I was going to say, there's probably no chance. You probably just
killed
our algorithm.
I'm so shadow banned.
So let's just not tag him in this. Let's
tag me. Go ahead.
Make sure he's not tagged. So anyway, it's been great to have you back on the show. It's been fun to keep up our friendship and come out and visit. It's funny. I remember when several years ago I was talking about buying a farm, and you were like, "Do not, under any circumstance." This is way before you were in a farm. Don't you ever do that. And I am thankful now. I'm thankful I did what I did. 9 acres is about right for me. Little cabin, no farm, out in the middle of nowhere. I can bunker my food instead of grow my food right now. And I've watched the work you've put in here. It's been pretty amazing. But, man, you couldn't do this and work another job.
No,
this is it.
No, you can't.
This is a full-time gig for sure.
So the show's not over. So here we go.
Yeah.
No, this is too big. 56 acres is crazy.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, Todd and I were talking about this on Growing Resilience. People think, well, I'm going to do this. I'm going to sell my place in town. I'm going to move out there and it's going to be cheaper. We're going to save, our expenses are going to be lower.
No.
Not at all.
Right.
Not at all.
At least not for a while. They might be in another 5 years.
Perhaps.
Right.
But then, that piece of equipment you bought that you never need in town, like your post hole auger, you break a U-joint and, like the fencing, fencing is incredibly expensive. I've got 2 miles of fence, and it's very expensive.
So wait, here's a question I haven't asked. I should have asked. Looking back now, do you enjoy it? Do you get? It's like, would you change anything? I mean, I'm sure there's little things, but like, are you happy that you made this choice?
Yeah, I yes, for sure. And we were very, very successful. The business was good. We were making more money than we needed to spend or even needed to save. And I was like, my kids were, my youngest one is kind of mid-teen, and the other one was almost ready to drive. I'm like, this is not any good for them because people don't. Nobody lives like this, right? Like 1% stuff or more, know. I'm like, this is ultimately probably not good for them. And that was one of the reasons I sold that business, is because I wanted them to see me start over. Yeah. Because when we were eating beans and cornbread and we were getting started.
They were too young to remember.
They weren't even born,
Yeah.
And so we just wrecked the whole thing. And when I sold it, I didn't know that we were going to do this. But we started over like we were a young couple, like we're living in a barn.
Yeah.
Making do. Yep. And my 19-year-old the other day, we were talking to both of them, both the kids, and the 19-year-old was like, "Oh no, best thing you ever done for us."
Yeah.
And
she's starting to get it.
It is. No, I mean, she ain't starting. She got it. She didn't go to college. She's working. She's saving her shekels.
Raising bees,
making money on that. That's going to be a real live enterprise for her.
Yeah.
No, they get it, and they're doing well. And they're above average, and I'm not just saying it because they're mine. They're remarkable. But doing this and modeling, how to start, I think will be very, very helpful to them.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. That's good. Awesome. Great place to wrap up the show. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in another week or two. Do another episode.